Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Working Out Loud. I'm Dave Darrington here. Once again, I'm happy to be just spending some time with a friend on a Friday afternoon talking about really cool technology, B2B type stuff that you don't know about, that you should hear about because it's freaking cool. And it actually has really awesome business applications. And I want to learn about it. So I'm going to skip all the rigmarole today, and we're just going to jump right in. This is my new friend, Tommy Cooksey. Tommy, welcome. Can you introduce yourself for a moment and where you're from and what your current role is?
Yeah, sure. My name's Tommy Cooksey. I'm actually the blockchain training person. The master trainer is my title at Simba Chain. We're a blockchain training we're really a blockchain solutions company that helps you to bring your solutions that might be a blockchain enabled solution or a Web3 enabled solution to some existing environment that you already have. So many times trying to realize that is just pretty hard. So we try to make that simple if we can. So that's what we do. Historically, I'm just a trainer. I've been teaching technology.
Just a trainer. No. My friend, you're a master trainer. You just said it. It's like Master Chief Halo.
Yeah, I've been teaching technology for 30 years. PeopleSoft as an ERP technology. I'm a full stack AWS architect, advanced architect, if you know what that does. So I do have that certification, security specialty in AWS and cloud. So got a lot of cloud certifications, and I do train on AWS cloud as well. So I'm an AWS authorized instructor.
So you're a certified geek, love technology. You're a master trainer. You got all these things, and you know, Tommy, what? Okay, so I want to talk to the audience, break the fourth wall again, I suppose, is that when we were talking, I'm looking at, on my desktop, I have this little device that's showing my Bitcoin, and I'm not going to talk about Bitcoin. I'm like, sure, only in passing, right?
Sure.
Just to prove a point. But every day I'm thinking about this technology that underlies what we're going to talk about, which has such a bigger scope, I think, than just, hey, is it a fad? I don't even want to get into that today. So I want to preface this discussion that we're not really talking about Bitcoin. We're going deeper, and we're talking about a new kind of, I don't know, where I really want to start is to just Tommy, get down to brass tacks. What in the hell is blockchain?
Well, we do need to probably give credit to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin did give us the realization of the need to have what we would consider a decentralized ledger that has actors who are of anonymous users, and that anonymity gives you a level of security when you have to deal with debasement of whatever something is. So a lot of times currencies get debased by governments and things like that. We're lucky enough that we have a pretty good system in the United States, but we have seen some of that debasement with overprinting of currency and things like that. So the important thing that I think that we need to remember is that we as humans, we don't have the ability to kind of be self-sustained. We have to work in communities, and in order to do that, we have to have some method to keep accountability of our transactions and have truth in those transactions and visibility in what's happening. And honestly, until blockchains came around, we relied on commodities to do that. You know, commodities were a level of value that we would store information in for us to be able to exchange that, right? And exchange value, whether that be in paper money and gold and bonds or whatever the thing might be.
Right.
So blockchains, what they've done, and let's just kind of break this down and make it simple. Blockchains use what we do in technology that has been baked into the ledger. So since the ledger isn't owned by one central authority, it's decentralized. The only way that we can mitigate the risk of the transactions that are on that ledger is to have some level of agreement. We call that consensus. It's just baked in. So blockchains have cryptography baked in order to get the results that you're looking for. The cryptography is what mitigates the risk. So there's always risk involved whenever you're dealing with transactions and value and things like that. So the cryptography kind of does that. And that's what
So
it
are
does.
you saying, Tommy, then humans don't trust each other with money or anything?
Yeah,
But you have
power corrupts absolutely, and I think that's a pretty accurate quote from way back when. But yeah,
way back.
it's it's
So
definitely something that we've had to deal with over and over and over again in societies.
right, and I think we're still struggling, like at a general level, a general education level, struggling with this concept. I still struggle with the concept of money, and you look at it like this should be worth this, and it's up or down, and inflation or deflate or what, like it's chaotic. So now we're shifting, and we're like, I really want to understand more about this concept of a ledger.
Okay.
Maybe in this is when I started thinking about, Tommy, me as a tech person, what I really like to get down to is boil down like, what is this concept and how can we use it for business and, like really understand it instantly? So I'm thinking about blockchain and I'm trying,
That's
and you know what I mean?
that's really great question because that kind of ties together a lot of my history, and I'm glad that you asked my introduction. When I did PeopleSoft, if you're not familiar with PeopleSoft, it does a lot of supply chain management and a lot of management of resources that may have dissimilar actors that might even be in the same enterprise, but they're working under different sets of books, right? So they may not agree on the outcomes of those assets. And so there's consensus problems. And so how do we get that? How do we come to an agreement? How can we build systems that have some of these cryptographic methods that are built in so that we have an immutable ledger, meaning
Immutable.
that
Okay.
yes, and meaning that it's just like your bank. If you make a deposit into your checking account and you meant to put it in your savings, you're going to see that in your bank on your checking ledger, right? It's not going to just be deleted. There's no such thing as a delete. And there's no such thing as an update either, where you overwrite something. In a
Oh,
immutable ledger, we just have creates and reads. That's it. There's no updates and there's no deletes.
so then this is like a long, okay. This is really helpful for me, Tommy, and maybe it is for other people because I think this is one thing we tend to skip. Like we go, oh, it's just Bitcoin. Okay. And then everybody's like off in some kind of weird land. But what I'm really trying to build up to is from a tech position, I'm going to get back to the concept of ledger. From a tech position, here's what I'm thinking about, Tommy. I go back and I think, okay, I used to teach databases
Yep.
and PHP, web design, databases. I was a SQL Server administrator for a time, and now my brain is kind of broken, because
Yeah.
I'm thinking of let's go way back. Let's go way
Sure.
back. I'm now in, I don't know, not Stone Age time, but very early
Mhm.
historic times
Yeah.
where we were the first people, and there's this. Okay, I'm going to get wacky here. Human beings are like the concept of history is all
Mhm.
bound up in this blockchain idea,
Yeah,
right?
you're absolutely right. I mean, I would argue, Dave, that cuneiform tablets, when we look at those old cuneiform tablets, they were records on what your deposits were into the king's depositories, right? And so when you would deposit your wheat, you would get a cuneiform tablet that would say, hey, this is the value that you had in wheat or in pigs or in whatever. And so and then when we go to the Knights Templar, you would make your trip and you would get the signed seal from the knights, and then you could retrieve your goods on the other end. It was the first form of banking, and so it was just a ledger. It's just how can we
Just
make this ledger as secure as we possibly can, and that's what we've been trying to do, literally forever. Since the dawn of man, I think.
Yeah, and you know what? Really, like I mentioned, breaks my brain a little bit ago, but that I think that visualization, Tommy, is kind of like frozen in time for us.
Yeah.
Like when I think about like I think about early days, I think about like Egypt or the Phoenicians who were the first to be credited with the formulation of an alphabet. And
Yeah.
that when human beings are doing all these because we're like stuff's happening, I can't get control over anything. I don't know what I have. I don't know where it's going. And
Yep.
now
Gotta
and
write it
now
down.
yeah. So okay. So this you went exactly where I'd hoped you would go with the ancient cuneiform tablets, and
Mhm.
then look now that's 5,000 years old and it's still
Yeah.
there. It shows Jimbo, the sheep herder, has sold to Frank, 5 sheep, and he
Yeah.
got X stacks of hay. I don't know, but that was important to them in that time,
Yeah.
and it's important to us today for wholly different reasons because now scroll forward, like I look at my bank account, like exactly what you're saying, and I'm like, oh, there's an error in there, and nobody can steal that and hide it under the table and steal my money.
Right.
And because that my money is very important to me because I've got to pay my bills and feed my children and go to the movies and do stuff that's important to me. And all through time, though. So here we've got this stretch. So let's say cuneiform tablet. I can't get in the screens. Bitcoin or blockchain. I'm so sorry.
Sure.
Blockchain, right? In that, we had all these different things: the invention of paper, binding
Oh
paper,
yeah.
books, shelving books. Now they're in the Library of Alexandria, and that burns down. Okay, everybody record for all of it is gone.
I'll give
Um,
you a really good one. One of my
good.
favorites is when we start to look at the Roman denarius. So I'll give you some facts on the Roman denarius. When the Roman denarius, I think I have this somewhere, but when it was first minted, I believe it weighed somewhere along the lines of 3 grams of silver. Um, and I know I'm going to mess these numbers up because
The
I just want to be
story
right.
is more important, Tommy.
But basically, what had happened by the end, it was less than 3% pure. It was over 97% at the beginning of the Roman Empire, 500 years. At the beginning of the Roman Empire, it was almost 100% pure, and it weighed a certain amount. That amount that it weighed was cut in to a third, so it was a third of its initial weight, and it was only like less than 10% pure. So that is debasement. Why did that happen? I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Well, they had to pay the soldiers. Well, one of the things they paid the soldiers in was salt. Till they got to India, and salt in India was easy to obtain, and it debased the currency that was held by the soldiers. So what they have to do? They had to do something with the currency, to make these really tough guys happy. So there's I don't know what the right answer is, but the important thing is we have to recognize these failures that have happened in our history and realize that debasing a currency isn't the right way to dig us out of a problem. And so what we need to do is we need to provide level of accuracy in our accounting methods, and we've always been trying and struggling to do that. And the cool thing about blockchains is we just bake the cryptography in. I mean, it just is. If you think about SHA-256 or hashing, you have a level of ambiguity that is so obscure that it is enough to reach every known atom in the universe, right? That's 2 to the 256 bit, but that's usually what we use in a lot of this ledger technology. But,
2 to the 256. Yeah,
yeah, it's
this is
huge.
hard nerd stuff. I love this.
Yeah,
But the point being, unless you had a quantum computer the size of the universe, you're not going to break that hash.
no.
Nobody's going to break that hash.
And the other cool thing is it's not just on one computer; it's on a bunch of different ones. So you would have to break it on all those computers at the same time for them all to reflect that, because there's not one place to go to agreement. You have to get at least 50% of them to agree before it's known truth to the network.
Okay. I think some blocks are finally clicking in place in my mental chain. No, like Tommy, this is exactly why I wanted to get on and discuss with you because I think once we start to manipulate in our heads the concepts that are underlying here. So it seems, can you let me riff on this for a minute? Because
Yeah, please.
we've got plenty of time today, but I want to get to the business aspects and why this is important to us even in education, even in any kind of software. But I think to do that, all like, so now I'm talking to you, a business person, right? You're looking at me, okay, Tommy, let's role play. I'm talking to a VP right now. And VP, you're the master trainer, and you're the VP, or you're a consultant who's partnering with you to try to implement a solution for a client, right?
Okay.
That person is like, okay, well, I don't really understand blockchain either. So as I start to think about it, one of the things I'm thinking of is DNA,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I I was a
Can't change
scientist.
it.
Yeah, no, and but well, you can, but we don't
Yeah.
want to, and that's not a good thing. let's
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
consider DNA. Like
Yeah.
DNA is this big long chain that's stuck inside every cell in our body. You pull it out, it's a copy, right? You pull
Yeah.
another one, it's a copy. Most of the times, although if it weren't for cosmic radiation and other things, our DNA would be immutable forever,
Yeah.
hopefully. And
Yeah.
now the point of that is that we wouldn't be living beings without that. So this is a practical use case of a blockchain, and that blockchain is a natural blockchain, right?
Yes.
So
Exactly.
what's happening is in our cells, other cells go or other enzymes or whatever look at it, go, oh, I need to make a copy of that. The cell splits, there's another copy of it. I need to make something, I need to grow an eye, I need to make a chemical. That's all the information about my body and my existence is all in this one little thing, and it's distributed everywhere.
Yes.
Right.
That's
So
exactly right.
now that's a fantastic, because now let's think about a ledger. Let's go back to, like, we want to know where all the sheep in the world are,
Yep.
and we're tracking sheep in the world today. Now in a database, I could build a database. I was a database manager. You know what? I could go in there and totally f that up. Database is very linear. It's very
Mhm.
structured. There's a
Yep.
way to put in and out, but you can also update, delete.
Yeah.
So you've got like the create, the read,
But
but
then you
there's
have
no,
godlike privileges. Yeah.
yeah. So if we like, this is actually kind of, this is a weird riff on a Friday, but if we were able to go in and mutate that DNA, all hell breaks
Yep.
loose.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And the same thing applies to our data. If you have a claim and we're building on that claim, we need to be able to rely on that data for somehow. There needs to be a certain level of immutability, blinding, and there's certain attributes to data that's important that we have that transparency piece. I call it the DI cat of blockchain.
DI cat. Okay.
And it's just
Slow
features.
down.
And I'll explain it, and I'll keep you an easy
Okay.
way to remember it. And what I'm explaining is it's just features of a blockchain that provide the capabilities that you a lot of times want that your normal network can't do.
Okay.
So when we think about a normal network, we don't have a centralized. We have a centralized network. It's not centralized. It's not decentralized. It's centralized. So
Network, you're talking about like internet, like my Ethernet router sitting on my desk.
well,
Right?
all the actors that are involved with the data set.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So you're talking about a network of entities.
Yes, network of users of that data set.
Got it.
And so that a lot of times is decentralized, but we're relying on a central authority to manage it.
Uh-huh.
There's a problem
Oh,
there. Like why do I trust them? What is it that I trust about them, and why do they own my data? And if they do own my data, am I just contributing from ease of use? And I would argue that a lot of Web 2 platforms have done that, right? We get on YouTube because we want to publish a video, not because we can't publish a video ourselves, but that makes it easy for us to have a presence. And so what we've done is we've contributed to a platform where we could be easily deplatformed. And even though we've created a community and we've used that platform to do discussions, we don't own our information. That's
hmm.
probably not fair, right? There needs to be probably clear separation between structure and then the content of the data, right? And
Yeah.
so the content probably should be provided by the users and owned by the users, I would say. And the structure is provided by whoever the provider is, right? So now don't you don't
Light
have
bulb
that
went
thing.
on. I
Yeah.
have a light bulb going on. Can I play with this? Because
Yes.
this kind of stuff, these conversations, Tommy, just to like sidebar this, are what I'm always fascinated by. This is what I call elicitation or discovery. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn about you to train other people at scale.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of getting back to the point of why I do this podcast
Right.
is that like you and I are having this conversation in the back office somewhere, and I'm trying to understand it to help you do some things. But I
Yeah.
really just need to understand it. But when we were like really get into it, these are fascinating discussions.
Yeah.
So I always say
Yeah.
instructional design. The first part of instructional design should always be done out loud with everybody listening, and made into a TV show because it's like all this is crazy. And
Yeah.
so now let's go back to YouTube. Now this is actually a practical use case,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
this is what I want to get into right now. Like, let's talk about real practical use cases for the technology, the blockchain technology, to enhance and make our lives better. And so it's like kind of a democratization. In other words, let's say um, I'll talk about YouTube first, and then I want to talk about an LMS
Okay.
approach, right? Because I'm trying to connect it, and then I'm like with the master trainer, you could like go, no, smack,
No,
this
no,
way.
no, no. Speaking my language, I think we're definitely on the same sheet of music with the LMS approach.
Yeah, now because this has come up. Okay, so YouTube exact point in YouTube is I follow a bunch of weird and not weird stuff. Like the not weird stuff is traditional, like kittens and fun, happy otter
Sure.
things, because that's who doesn't love that kind of stuff. But but then every once in a while, I got something in my feed that's a little weird,
Mhm.
and you hear about people getting deplatformed and how much of an effect on their livelihood, not their lives.
Oh
Let's say
yeah.
let's say I have a channel. This is what I'm doing right now. I'm streaming to YouTube. Tomorrow, I could have said something like somebody could have said, "Hey, look, that wonderful picture of a bomber behind you on your wall, or your exact kind of violin that's on your wall, broke a licensing agreement with the
Whatever.
company that made
Yeah.
it, or the artist that had an NFT for that thing." We're going real deep now, and now they're like pissed, and they go, "Okay, they lodge a complaint." You immediately get blocked
Yeah.
from YouTube, and now and there's an investigation. You're not making money now because you'd monetized your channel.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, and that affects you economically, and so
Inst-
instant. Yeah, and so the workflow involved with that obviously needs to be addressed, on YouTube side. But from a consumer side, how can you fight back? How could you be like, well, I don't want to contribute to a platform that's not going to allow me to have ownership of my things.
yeah,
So there needs to be or even with those, some of those copyright things, we can start to talk about that because that's a beautiful use case for blockchain. Because imagine if you are an artist and that is your picture and you want people to use it and you just want to build it into the use case. Say, hey, if you use it, it's going to cost you 10 cents per use case, depending on this. This is built into the contract. So
that's what you mean by a smart contract.
yes, that's exactly right. I guess we got a little ahead of ourselves. Yeah. So
No, this is really good, Tommy, because like seriously, why I wanted to do this. Another reason I want to do this is because the use cases in finance are freaking boring. I'm just saying that to be contentious,
sure.
um, because I mean, we think about when I think about money, I can't get excited. Well, I get excited about when I make it, but I don't get excited about managing all the little pesky details.
Yeah.
And it troubles me every day. I'm like, well, I just need to trust my bank is going to do the right thing. So that's at the core of it. Like, how do we enlighten our audience about okay, use cases for blockchain is not just money.
Yeah.
And we just talked about YouTube. Let me talk about an LMS. I know we got ahead of ourselves with that, but let me talk about an LMS now. So one thing that I think is fascinating, and if the Credly folks are listening to this, Credly is all about credentialing.
Hmm.
There's a number of companies out there that are doing this, but now you're increasingly seeing them go, we're now in blockchain, and we have that capability.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Okay, so right now, Tommy, this is what I love. So again, I'm putting my educator hat on.
Sure.
As an educator, I go, all right, we can really role play this. Tommy, you're the master trainer at Simba Chain.
Hmm.
I come to you and I learn about your API and understand from you exactly not just about what your application does. Now, I actually sat down with you in like a training session for several days, where at the end of that training session, I go back and I proved to you I know what I'm doing. I actually proved it. Like you said, here's your sheet, and the sheet has go read this, find this on the change, make a little application that leverages the API. And what I want you to find is this key, and this is your hash. How do you decrypt? Find that information and then get that back to me. This is my certification or credentialing. And you would
Yeah,
have to do a lot of those.
and that's really what Credly is kind of doing now in the kind of the private space. But with the Simba chain, one of our products that we have is called Badges and Certs, and it's built right around that type of solution. My goal is that when we go into training, we create a situation that allows the user to create an identity that is their decentralized. They can decide on whether they want that to be anonymous or not.
Yeah.
And then we can issue credentials to that identity once we follow up on training based on the training that they set it. Normally that training, if it's just a butt in the seat and we just, hey, you got the training that we delivered to you, then that's going to be a certification. The badges level, we try to get that more where we're actually doing some verification of credentials. Yeah. So that's we would call it verified or validated credentials. And so when you can start to solve those two problems, and we'll talk about that a little bit, decentralized identities and verifiable credentials, think about how you could affect all kinds of workflows. Think about a hospital. Okay, I'll give you a great example. In the UK, one of our professors that works at University of Cardiff is also on staff here at Simba, works in decentralized identities. And one of the things that they did in the UK was they needed to have doctors to be able to move between systems, but they weren't in that particular hospital system. So they needed to have the UK medical system needed to have a way to identify the medical workers so that they could work in between different hospital systems. And they used these decentralized identities and verifiable credentials in order to do that. That unlocks an exorbitant amount of opportunities if we start to think about application of that in other use cases.
Wait. So are you saying then, let's talk about the United States healthcare system.
Yeah, exactly.
And HIPAA. Okay.
Yep.
So that's immediately, because I've worked in healthcare for a decade and pharmaceuticals and stuff. It's really important that, it's actually important all over the world for your identity to be secure, particularly when medical information is. The reason being is if the insurance industry gets a whiff that you've got some weird disease, they could just pull the rug out from under you, which we don't want to happen. And they actually don't want to know either.
Yes.
Right. So because
it's compliance for them. They're just trying to stay compliant. That's why you have the Cerners of the world and so on. So
which all of this is actually deeply fascinating once you get past the boring technical details. Is like, this is my human rights as a being. But now we're overlaid with this corporate reality of like, well, how do we keep corporations not from cheating? Because you do.
And you're really kind of speaking my language. I actually put a set of training material together on this, but one of the things that I'll say at the beginning of that course is I'll say at some point in your lifetime, the healthcare information that you need will, whether it be your healthcare information, your parents, your children, somebody's information is going to be more important to you than any other information, whether it be financial, debt, doesn't matter. It's going to be more important to you. And the fact that you don't have good visibility and accurate access to that information is an absolute travesty that has to be addressed. And we just haven't done it yet.
Well, okay. I want to riff on this because this is fascinating to me. Well, let me tell you a story of actually a real experience that I had with medical stuff.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sick. I just had something going on. I needed to do some tests, but I ended up between two different hospital systems.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And they don't share.
Well, yeah. So that's exactly the use case that I'm talking about. I really wish. So I'm in one system, and they're like, "Yeah, we know you," and blah 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 blah. You get the other one, like, "Okay, now I'm not feeling very good," and I'm
Mhm.
going through this litany of things like, "Yes, no, because I'm sick that day." And I'm like, all my records are with my doctor. Yeah, well, we could go through, but in that moment, it's late at night. The office is not open. They can't get the stuff. It's just me in my state. Like I'm not like I was in the emergency room, right? And I'm like, oh gosh, what's going on? Nothing. So let's pivot. If I had that record and that record again, we're talking a blockchain is replicated,
Yeah,
right? Not
yeah,
centralized at this place. It's over here and here and here and here and here and here and here. Chances are, a bomb could go off, a nuclear one somewhere, and it'd still be okay. 50% check in, say, yes, Dave is who he is. I give you my, okay, beep, I'm going to give you my code. This will unlock read access to my blockchain health record.
okay, okay.
and and now I say you can see a 5-year window on the chain in my record only. You can't go back further because you see all of the things that I've done, all of my treatments, all of my prescriptions,
Yep.
my healthcare record, my weight, my what immunizations I've had for COVID, did I get COVID, everything. Read it all the way through, and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Darrington, yeah, you're doing pretty good." But I see this, and now I understand, and I can look at the big picture, and I give you better healthcare.
I think that you could even with this, you could even start to apply like wearables and biometrics and things like that. Like wearables can start to detect slurred
Like this
speech.
guy.
Yeah, exactly. It can detect slurred speech, give you insight into a possible stroke. If you take medication early on for a stroke, the chances of reversing the effects of that stroke are greatly increased, right? So there's a lot of cool things that you can do from a medicine side of point when you know what risks that are involved. So you can just help the person mitigate the risks that they have involved as long as they own their data and they know who they're sharing it with. But you got to have kind of a trustable workflow, and sometimes that's hard to do with regulation and governance. Many times I'll pitch I do a lot of hackathons, and so I'll
Love
I'll
hacking.
pitch on the hackathons to the entrance that some of these healthcare problems that we deal with. Let's just do it for our pets. It's so much easier. They don't have the rights, and maybe we can give them a better health system than
Oh,
we
and
have.
it's a lot easier to chip a pet than a human being.
Well, yeah, and there's so many things. There's that argument is definitely well to be established. I think on both sides. So yeah, we have to look at things differently and from a different lens.
I really like this. This is probably the most enlightening conversation I've ever had about this kind of technology, Tommy. It's like I'm glad we're able to get on. I want to go back to the LMS real quick, and then I
Sure.
want this riff. Like, tell me, like, I really kind of want to get into how do we approach learning how to use blockchain in our world. And I'll give you
Yeah.
one example for me. Going back to the LMS. Now, this is to my friends in who I talk to all of them in our space who or deal with learning management platforms or learning experience platforms. Don't worry. I think this is an ad. Like one of the things for me, Tommy, like this is a palpable pain that I've had that's really hard in customer. Okay, I'm talking about customer education now. What
Okay.
customer education to me is, and you and I are talking about various different stuff because you're doing it.
Hmm.
Customer education really is trying to boil the ocean early on in a very very early phase organization and growing as that organization pursues exit. Like
Yeah.
I want to start an idea. I want to build an organization around it. It's a B2B SaaS or B2B2C SaaS, and I'm going to grow that and scale that and launch it, and that idea is in the world, it's disruptive. Maybe it gets incorporated into another organization, maybe it stands alone. But this is the thing that we tech people are doing every day. We're
Yeah.
disrupting, we're bringing new ideas to light. Now that journey in an LMS is very difficult. Like an LMS is, it is generally a database, it's not
Mhm.
distributed, you have one source of truth. And I was even thinking the other day that in some context, like the ultimate goal of an LMS as it evolves, and I'm seeing some of the ones that we work with are starting to do this. I want to distribute. I want to
Yeah.
take my knowledge. Okay, here's Dave teaching something, and I'm gonna blow it out to the world, right?
Yes.
But I want that to come back. So now you start seeing things like XAPI technology, SCORM,
Mm-hmm.
technologies that dial home. I could make a piece of, let's say we build Simba Chain 101, right?
Yep.
And this is the first end user, lower tech version of what you normally go through with your more ops and developer people. So now we're getting into exposing the endpoints and the technology that you have in your product
Yeah.
at scale for a much broader audience who are not as tech savvy, right?
Yes. That's
So
exactly right.
this is exactly what you need to do. Now, this is hard because you go, okay, this is all my peeps are going to say, we need an LMS. All right, so we go out and we buy an LMS. Great. Now, I will tell you for an absolute fact that while most of those companies would take your business, you don't have anything made. You have nothing done. You're just starting out. And
Mm-hmm.
they would be like, well, maybe you should wait a while, make some content.
Do you want
Right?
us to curate it for you? Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, in some ways, like ultimately, what I like to see is that our LMS organizations have integrated with the blockchain, and now they can have this record. So, they can say, okay, I could build you a platform, and you could do a bunch of stuff at my house over here, at my training center, right? And I
Mhm.
and my system systemically understand how to read write to it, and now I'm creating an immutable record, no matter what. Like even I would even say better, we have an immutable learning record that goes throughout all of the learning systems,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because when we start to look at like even whether it be a training program for a someone that's just a pipe fitter, or it's a training program that's someone that's trying to get a degree in a particular program. It usually has a certain baseline of requirements, and we can do those baseline requirements asynchronously. And an LMS provides the capabilities a lot of times for us to provide those engagements.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, what we've done is we've removed a lot of the cost involved in education, and we've started to democratize the ability to just access the information.
Yeah.
And we try to curate it and put it into a way that it's easily consumable for most people. Um, and that's awesome. And so when we start to think about, well, how could we use that with the blockchain? Well, that's pretty cool. Well, we talked about decentralized identities and verifiable credentials. Well, I don't care who you are, but if you went through my blockchain Ethereum training course and you passed and you built a project and you know how to hack smart contracts and you know what the vulnerabilities are, and I can probably find some things for you to do, right? So there's once we can start to verify that you've done some training and you've started to have a level of competence, then you can then start to maybe build a talent pipeline, I think. And so there's I think there's components that have to be put together in all of this, but the LMS piece is a huge piece. It's something that we've used traditionally to basically, like I just said, disrupt a training so that you don't have to go sit in the training room and listen to somebody talk to you about being culturally aware or whatever, right? We can just watch the 15-minute HR video and we can get it, and we all know that you did it, and we get our little thing at the end and we take the test and we're done. And so let's take that to the next level. Let's take that to a level of competence for something that actually has some value that you want to own, and then let you own it.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is all really cool, Tommy. I'm having so much fun with this. Um, okay, so my audio is coming through clear, right? No problem.
Yeah. I think your sound went up a little bit, but yes, it does seem to be clear for me.
Okay, cool. So let's bring it home here. We got a few more minutes here. So one of the things I want to close out on is like actually how do we think about learning to use this technology, like your technology? What can you show us a little bit about Simba Chain and how it all works out?
Yeah, so like you had mentioned earlier, normally what I like to do is I like to put my students into one of three buckets. And the 3 buckets that I'll put them in is they're either going to be just I call them the C-suite folks, but it's not picking on my C-suite. But a lot of times, if you're funding something, you just want to know the facts and want to know the value add proposition, who's doing it, why they're using it, and that's it. That's all. You don't want a lot of clouded stuff. So very succinct. We try to put some together that material for our C-suites. But we have this tool, and I'd like to demo it for you. And
I would love to see you demo it.
Yeah, it's called our Quick Start tool, and I want to kind of preface it a little bit before I show it. But what it does is it takes all the things that you'll learn when you start to learn about blockchain. So things like smart contracts, things like wallets, things like transactional hashes and different networks and things like that. And it bundles all that together into one suite of products, into a web-based IDE, and I'll show it to you in just a second.
Oh, cool.
And then you can start to realize how this works. What it'll do for you at the end is it'll give you a REST-based API that you can interact with and do. Remember earlier, I said there's only creates and reads in a blockchain. So you can do your creates and reads to that REST-based API and just see if you're getting the things that you might expect to get out of an immutable ledger. Right?
Yeah.
That's really what we want is an immutable ledger of that stuff. So you mentioned earlier, about information. One of the things that I like to use as an analogy for blockchains is think of it as kind of like the Dewey Decimal System for all things that have happened.
Yeah.
So you go into the library, you want to find some information about something. Well, you go to it's the computer now, but it's using that indexing mechanism to find it. Well, basically, a blockchain is just an index of things that have happened, whether that information is on chain or off chain. We can still hash it and put the hash on chain, and that'll tell us the state of something. And that's pretty important. We do that a lot in Simba, and I'll show that to you in just a second.
Cool.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
All right.
Just a second.
Yeah, this is the best part about it, where you actually show it off. And remember, this is being so if you're time traveling, this is being recorded. You can watch it anytime.
Let's see, share slides. Let's see. When I go to share, okay, share screen. There we go. Easiest with two. Okay, share screen. All right, there we go. So you should be seeing my camping trip there.
Yeah, yep, I added that to the stream.
Yep, there we go. Okay, so what I've done already is I've already navigated out here to app.simbachain.com. And if you want to navigate out to app.simbachain.com, you can feel free to create your own account for free, and you can play around with this tool yourself. What this tool is, as I said before, it's really just kind of a mock-up tool, but it does a lot of things for us. It allows us to integrate with a wallet, allows us to write a smart contract, which is kind of our logic that we want to create, and allows us to put it on a blockchain and see if it works for us. So let me show you how that would work. Is up here, we have this blockchain wallet section. And in our wallet section, we can come in and we can just generate a wallet. So we can just put in a password that we want to put in for our wallet.
So in a wallet is the concept very similar to a wallet, right? Where it stores all of...
I don't like the word wallet, because I'm going to just put Dave's wallet here. Dave's wallet. There we go.
All right.
And
no special characters.
Let's go ahead and create that. And so what this is doing, though, and it really is kind of a misnomer, because wallet makes you feel like that the money or the things that you have on the blockchain. So like, for instance, if you have a Bitcoin wallet, you might think your Bitcoins are in the wallet. They're not. Wallets should probably be called keychains, honestly, because really what's in it is called your private keys. Now, so what we're seeing here, this is a public key.
Mm-hmm. Because you always have a public and a private pair, right?
Right. And the private key, and since what we use is we use what's called hierarchical deterministic wallets. So there's, in short, they just call them HD wallets. But that just means that there's these I think it's 12 words here that create a mnemonic phrase. So instead of you having to remember a bunch of numbers for your private key, you just remember these words, right? And if you remember those in that order, and there's Dave's private keys. And so you could restore your wallet anywhere you wanted to, as long as it conformed to that same Web3 standard. So it's an easy way for you to integrate with the wallet and start to use wallets to sign transactions. Why? Well, I mentioned earlier 2 to the 256-bit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the private key is actually a 256-bit key. And then this is your public key, and that's a 256-bit key. So between those two keys, what we're using in cryptography is we can use the public key to verify that it was signed by somebody who owns these things, these seed phrases, the private key.
Right.
So I know the source of all claims, all rights, all changes, all updates, anything that's happening, that happens on the blockchain. Any updates to that blockchain, any modifications to that blockchain, we'll know where it originated from because we know the seed phrase.
Exactly.
The source. But what we also have to do is a blockchain also has an economical element associated with it in the form of some type of a token usually. And then Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, they use different types of tokens like Ether and Bitcoin in order to pay for things. And so what we do is we give you an interface to a lot of the test networks. The test networks are just sandboxes that allow you to mock things up and see if it works. So we have integrations here to Avalanche, Binance, Circle of Life. I'll explain some of these in just a second. Quorum, Ropsten, Rinkerby, and then Rootstock. Now, you might be like, well, what the heck is all of that? Well, and it's probably a good question, right? Here's the thing, and I don't want to get too bogged down with this. We try to use a lot of options for you when you're mocking this up. So I mentioned earlier, functional users. This tool is designed for functional users. Who's a functional user? That's somebody that knows the workflow. They know how to supply a bowling alley with bowling pins because they've been in the bowling pin business for 50 years, but they have no idea how to write programming language stuff.
Okay, yeah.
So they're the workflow experts. They're the ones that know these are the data points and these are the things that we have to know from the system in order to be able to do our work. Okay, cool. So that's what these workflow experts are going to do, and they're going to want to have lots of choices. So what we try to do is we try to be as blockchain agnostic for those workflow users so that they have an opportunity to be as creative as they want to be, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
So what we've done here is Avalanche is kind of it's a chain that's designed to give you fast transactional velocity. So if you needed something like that with low transaction costs, you might use that. Binance is something that has a lot of DeFi type stuff built into it. So if you needed to have a DeFi parameter, you want to take advantage of some of their functionality, you might lean towards that. I'll come back to Circle of Life, but remember, we're Simba, so that'll make sense.
I was wondering about that. So okay, cool. So different networks with different specialties. I can test a lot of different things that I'm working on. This gives me the flexibility to test out appropriately.
Yeah. And the cool thing is we're just giving you lots of flavors. And if you wanted to use the Circle of Life, that's kind of your own little personal sandbox that's only inside of Simba, and it won't be external. So nobody else will be able to see what you're doing. So if you wanted to have kind of a private sandbox, you could use that.
Perfect.
And so once we have the wallet established, so let's go ahead and we'll just go ahead and go to this Avalanche test network.
I do have to interrupt briefly, Tommy. We got about 8 minutes. I do have a hard stop, but
yeah,
just
sure.
give me an idea of time.
Yeah, sure. So we won't spend too much time on that. The real cool piece of this is this next piece that I'd like to show you. And this is where that functional expert really allows them to get their idea on paper. It's called our smart contract designer. And it's another piece of this tool, but it allows us to come in and take your idea and turn it into a reality. How are we going to do that? Well, on a blockchain, it's just keeping track of something that you think's got value and you want to put it on an immutable ledger.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's an asset. So we're going to take this asset and we're going to call this Dave's show. Right. So let's just say that Dave created a show, and we're going to add some parameters about that show. Maybe we need to know, was it monetized or not? Monetized. So that's a Boolean, right? And so we'll
Yeah.
save that, and then we can go in and add other parameters. So all we're doing here, and you can kind of understand this is a VBA, but we're just putting in the data primitives, right? Defining the minimum level of size that we want to use to hold this element of information about this data point, right? That's it. But who are we teaching this to? We're teaching this to the functional user who has no idea how to use DBA type stuff. So we're just giving them the tools to be efficient, right? And we're trying to teach some basic primitive stuff.
Just my show name, when did it air? Did I monetize it? It's all the things that I care about, right?
Right.
And it could
so
be anything.
We're just putting these tuples in, little data points that we want to put on a blockchain. If remember earlier I said sometimes you don't want to have something on chain.
Yeah.
That's what this little thing here is. Now what this does is it runs it through SHA-256, which is going to just create a thumbprint of any data that you had, whether it's 2 lines of data or 2 gigs of data, and it puts that thumbprint on chain. And so now it's immutable and it's irreversible. So we know the state of it at a certain point in time.
So that could be like, I have a video or a podcast episode. So it lives over on YouTube.
Yep.
And all this system is doing is going, snapshot it. I have a digital thumbprint of it, and make sure it's the right one, and it's the one that you should be seeing. So it's a trust token for that piece of content.
Yeah, and a lot of times this will be used like an MD5 hash. Yeah, like so that's a lot of times what we'll use an MD5.
So it's fast and easy to do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so or another thing you might use this for is if you have information that needs to be deletable, right? So the right to be forgotten when you start thinking about GDPR. When you start to think about HIPAA regulations, you can't put stuff on chain that's going to violate PII and that kind of stuff. You'd want to keep it off chain. So that's
okay. So that allows me to go, now this record was deleted, but there's still a note of its existence. So it was there. I know I know that it was there, and I know kind of what it was, but it's gone.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Wow. So, okay. Now that I understand that more. I mean, when you start seeing it and thinking about it conceptually, like at a high level, it's just like vague, but now this brings it into reality.
And so what we're doing is we're just mocking up our workflow. We could add a transaction that would be making a state change to your show. So let's say, for instance, if you added in, well, I'm going to monetize this, but I'm going to go ahead and monetize it and split monetizations with my sponsors or whatever, right? And so you could start to add in these transaction models that you want to have in place and just define it, whatever your workflow is. So here, you can start to kind of idealize that, but let me give you an idea what this might look like.
Oh, wow.
So this is an entire cost insurance freight that we've built out that tracks, a purchase order to a buyer and a seller and tracks the product and the ASN numbers and the invoice and the shippers and the load boards and the carriers, because you have all these separate actors that are concerned about these particular data points that we're modeling up and we're putting here on a blockchain for them to verify through the workflow. And then they can use that to say, well, okay, I need to ship some more insulin to that particular hospital because they're running low or whatever.
Right. No, so now I'm visualizing the workflow too. That's really cool. Yeah. That makes it easier to understand.
Behind the scenes, what our tool does is we call it low code, no code. So if you're a coder, you're not going to be impressed. So I will just kind of let's set the stage there. But if you're not a coder, this is very impressive, because what this is doing is it's generating an entire code base, which is the smart contract that's required to represent that workflow that we just. Right. So all these different
objects.
What,
a JSON object or something easily readable?
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just a struct. Yeah, it's just a constructor that's creating basically this great big JSON object and defining them as functions, and then defining all those input definition types and put in place for those different tuples are all defined there. So it's all there. But the cool thing is now that workflow expert, they're not going to the technical team with just an idea. They're going with them, well, this is what we think it should look like. And now we just got to figure out how to pull it out of your system. And that's where our block system comes in. And I don't have time to maybe get into that today, but we're building another system that allows you to kind of retrofit your existing environment to be kind of Web3 enabled. So you already have all this data. How do you give it back to the user? Right.
That's what I'm gonna do. Oh my gosh. Well, Tommy, this is amazing. I want to start. We have to start wrapping up, but
Yeah, sure.
this for me as a business user. Now, I've been in IT. I was in enterprise security for years, and this I can tell you for a fact that this kind of stuff is like now real, right? It's
Yeah,
like oh, like for example, I remember I was working for a major ISP, and we were working with edge data, and we were trying to bring data out of a massive data repository, and the problem was latency. That system was very slow, and we needed to be anywhere in the world and be able to retrieve records quickly. So the way that they were trying to articulate this, which was really complicated. Now, if that like so basically it had a master database, and we had micro databases that were in the cloud that had some of the data, but they didn't have everything. And then they had to dial back home, and then overnight had to like sync up and all this kind of stuff. Whereas if it was a blockchain, right? What
yeah,
would have it would have been very different. It's distributed, it's all there. I could use these other things. Like I'm just starting to learn about DeFi and other things which are meant to like speed up the act of finance or like augment. There's all this cool stuff. But now, okay, just to wrap it up, I'm seeing the value of your platform. And again, like having a conversation out loud about the fundamentals of it is what we need to do to like go, I get it. The light bulb's on. This is super
sure.
cool, Tommy. And I want to thank you for spending the time to like actually explore history, crypto, all the kinds of technology that's under. And I think I have a much better handle, and I hope our listeners do too, on what is blockchain and how can we use Simba chain to do it. Anything else that you want to say as we wrap up? Like, how can we find you? Any pro tips to close out
Yeah.
today?
Please check us out at simbachain.com. We're a lot of times when you look at blockchain companies, you'll see that they have some ICO or some grandioso idea. We're born out of academia. We came out of a DARPA grant that was given to the University of Notre Dame, a couple of professors there, and a couple founders at a company called Itamco in Indiana. And I mentioned earlier, I said decentralized immutable cryptographic data that's anonymous and transparent. Well, we got a lot of Ians at Simba. And so a couple of them are doctors. So I say Dr. Ian cares about transactions. If you can remember that, then you can remember the first letter of all those features that we look for in a blockchain. So anyway, hopefully that helps to kind of tell you a little bit more about Simba. Go check us out at simbachain.com. Check out that quick start tool that we do have available, and then be prepared for some of the offerings that we do have coming with our blocks platform that will allow us to adapt this technology much easier.
All right, Tommy. Thank you so much for jumping on. Again, this is great to learn about new tech, not necessarily new tech, just the tech we're using every day that mostly we don't really understand because we haven't had these really fun talks.
Yeah.
So thanks again. What'd you say?
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Catch us next time. We'll be on next week with more fun. Cheers. Bye.